Everyone. Well, welcome back to my channel for today's episode of Coffee, Crime, and Crafts. Today, we're going to travel back in time to a cold, dark winter night in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia in February of 1906. It was in a small mining town called Dominion, located in Cape Breton, that a tragedy occurred. A family of 4 were found dead in a house fire, but it was quickly discovered that they did not perish in the fire, they were murdered. It is believed to possibly be the first case of mass murder in Nova Scotia's history. For today's episode, I am enjoying a nice dark roast coffee, and I'm going to be working on a cardigan that I'm trying to finish for my husband for Christmas. It's actually a cardigan based on a cardigan worn by Ted Bundy. I know that sounds really creepy and weird, but my husband and I had watched that Ted Bundy movie that came out this past year with Zac Efron in it. And in the movie, Zac is wearing a cardigan. I'll put a picture in here. Identical to one that Ted Bundy wore. And my husband really liked the look of it. Now, he's never asked me to knit or crochet him anything. And I couldn't find a pattern for this particular sweater. I could find knitted cardigans of a similar style, but I crochet a lot faster than I knit, so I decided I was going to crochet the cardigan. I'm making up this pattern right out of my head just based on photos of the cardigan and some measurements I took of my husband's clothing to see if it's going to fit. And fingers crossed, it's going to work out and I'm going to have it done in time for Christmas. So I've already completed both of the front panels for the cardigan. This is the back that I'm working on. And I'm going to continue working on this while we discuss this week's crime. So I'm running out of time before Christmas, so I'm really focused on getting this piece finished. So why don't you grab your beverage of choice and your craft of choice, and let's get started. So the small mining town of Dominion in Cape Breton, or on Cape Breton Island in Nova Scotia, it was previously known as Bridgeport. It is located on Cape Breton Island, as I said, in the province of Nova Scotia, on the eastern coast of Canada. In 1906, when the town was first incorporated, Dominion's population consisted mostly of people employed they were directly connected to the Dominion Coal Company. They had opened a coal mine in the area, and as a matter of fact, the remnants of many of the old mine shafts still run underneath the town to this day. The local high school there even sank slightly into one of the foundering mine workings and subsequently had to be demolished. Anton Stetka, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but he and his wife immigrated to Canada from Austria, and I couldn't find any mention of her name in the documents I researched. So I'm just going to refer to her as Anton's wife or Mrs. Stetka. throughout this video. Anyway, Anton found work at the coal mine, and they worked toward purchasing a small single-story home located near the railroad tracks just outside of Dominion. This home was owned by the Dominion Coal Company, and employees could work for a stipend, paying a portion of their wages to cover the cost of purchasing a home from the company. The home was quite small and was approximately 16 feet by 20 feet, which isn't very big. The little home contained 5 very small rooms. Anton and his wife started a family, and by 1906, they had 2 children, a 4-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter. In January of 1906, while Anton was away from the house, a co-worker of his by the name of James Snellgrove attempted to sexually assault Anton's wife. Snellgrove denied the charges, but she was quite vocal about the incident and was adamant that Snellgrove be charged and prosecuted for his crime. Stemming from the scandal, the Stetkas began to feel unwelcome in the community. Their house, oops, I've got my yarn tangled up here. Just one second. There we go. Their house was located just a few doors down from Snellgrove's mother. She attempted to make peace with Anton's wife, and she even made offers of a financial reward for Mrs. Stetka to drop the charges against her son. But all attempts to smooth things over were unsuccessful, and Snellgrove remained in jail, eventually being convicted and spending 4 years in Dorchester Penitentiary for his crime. Life for the Stetka family in the community became more difficult after the allegations were made against Snellgrove. By February, they had made the decision to leave Dominion and return with their children to Austria. Anton went to work on Thursday, February the 15th, and met with the president of the mine, a man by the name of Henry Mitchell. He wanted to talk about terminating his employment and getting a refund on the wages he had paid toward their house. Because the mine owned several homes, the typical process when an employee left was to take ownership back of the property, and it could then be refinanced to another employee. So Henry told Anton that he was much too busy that evening and to return the next morning to discuss the matter. Anton picked up his pay packet, his regular pay packet, later than normal that evening, and then returned home. For anyone who's curious, this cardigan, I'm just doing this all in single crochet, which makes it quite easy. Okay. I actually think the crochet adds more of a retro feel to the cardigan than if I had knit it. So Anton returned home after picking up his pay packet late Thursday evening, February the 15th. A lot of people reported seeing lights on at the Stetka home much later than usual on that night, even as late as midnight, which was not typical. Some people just believe that the Stetkas were up late packing and preparing to leave possibly the following day. At approximately 1 a.m., Thursday night, Friday morning, I guess technically, train engineer Alexander McKinnon was just pulling his freight train into Dominion as he was on a special run from Sydney to Glace Bay. As he approached the houses that were located near the railroad tracks, he saw an orange glow. Realizing it was a house on fire, he stopped the train and sounded the whistle a couple of times to raise the alarm to residents in town and to hopefully get a fire crew en route. McKinnon ran from the train with his onboard fire officer, which my understanding is they typically had someone on board who was like a fire chief or a fire crew member, because their train was a freight train and did a lot of transporting of coal. So anyway, he ran from the train with his onboard fire officer, and although the house was already engulfed in flames, he broke open the door in an attempt to check for occupants. When he did, the family dog bolted from the house, but unfortunately, the fire was much too intense for McKinnon to get inside or to see if there was anybody still in there. Fire crews did reach the house and worked on the blaze, but the fire raged on for several hours until the house collapsed, leaving a horrific sight. All 4 members of the Stetka family slept in one bedroom that was nearest to the kitchen, and they were all deceased. The initial investigation uncovered some horrific details, the biggest of which was that Anton Stetka had been beheaded. There was significant damage to the back of his skull, and his head was found separated, lying several feet from his body. His wife was found out of bed with damage to her skull from a blunt object. Both children were found still lying in their bed, covered with a blanket, and each one had been struck, leaving damage to the left sides of their heads. A bloodless axe was found lying in the middle of the bedroom, believed by many to be the murder weapon. The investigation into the fire and the deaths of the family was bungled pretty much from the beginning. The coroner's report failed to find an exact cause of death, and the official police report stated that no crime had been committed and that the fire had started through mysterious means and the family had been overcome by smoke and flame. To people who were there at the scene that night, however, that blatantly did not seem to be the case. Just checking to see if I'm still in focus there with my crochet. I think I am. So, after the bodies had been found, a coroner's inquest was immediately started, and that lasted 8 days. 30 witnesses were called, but they could not locate a murderer, I should say. There was some speculation that the deaths were connected somehow to the upcoming prosecution of James Snellgrove for his assault of Mrs. Stetka. But there was no evidence of that, and the Stetkas were moving, which meant Mrs. Stetka was not even going to testify at Snellgrove's trial. She was leaving before that had even occurred. Nicholas Power, just got to turn my crochet around here a little bit. Here we go. So, Nicholas Power was the newly appointed chief of police for Halifax, and he presided over the investigation. There are several instances of mistakes that he made throughout his career, and they eventually cost him his job. He actually only lasted 18 months as chief of police, and the investigation into the deaths of the Stetka family were one of those cases that was believed that he just horrifically bungled during his time as chief there. There are many theories regarding what could have actually happened to the Stetkas, but nothing has ever been confirmed, and to this day, no person has ever been charged with their murder. The first theory was that it was simply a robbery gone wrong. Actually, I guess the first theory is actually that it did have something to do with the charges against James Snellgrove. But like I said, that couldn't be proven. Some people believe that maybe the Stetkas were being targeted for retribution for following through with those charges. But again, there was no evidence that could actually link anyone to acting out in that regard, or in regard of, or on Snellgrove's behalf. Another theory is that it was a robbery gone wrong. This motive seems to rear its head because of the fact that Anton had picked up his pay packet just that evening. And at a search of the house, that seemed to be missing, along with his watch. Now, it doesn't seem plausible, as Anton's pay packet would have only been a small sum of money, certainly not worth the killing of 4 people and burning the house down. The family were in no way well-to-do, and Anton wouldn't have received the return of the money that he had paid into that residence until he returned to meet with the president of the mining company the following morning. So he didn't have any amount of money there at the house, unless people thought that he had already gotten the money after meeting with the president that afternoon and broke in and decided to rob them before they left town. Some proposed that it could have been a murder-suicide, and that Anton was so bereft over the incident involving his wife and James Snellgrove that he killed her and the children before killing himself. This, of course, was quickly refuted based on the injuries that were inflicted. I mean, Anton obviously did not remove his own head. That's pretty much a given. So eventually, the case at the end of the coroner's inquest, 8 days later, it was closed as a tragic house fire, believe it or not. A little more than a century later, a book that was published in 2017 proposed a new idea or a new theory. A man by the name of Bill James and his daughter, Rachel McCarthy James, wrote a book called The Man from the Train. They analyzed records of crimes in North America in the early 20th century. And they uncovered what they believe is the existence of a serial killer they refer to as America's most elusive serial killer. Their belief is that a man named Paul Mueller is actually responsible for killing between 40 and 100 people as he traveled by train to small towns, mostly in the U.S. Midwest, between the years of 1898 and 1912. He was a transient lumberjack or woodcutter, and he would search out homes with young families that also had windows that were easily opened. He was known to kill the family with the blunt end of an axe that he typically found on site. He was also known to assault young females in the home post-mortem. He would often cover windows and sometimes mirrors, and he would block exits and set the house on fire as a means to cover up his crimes. Of course, back in the late 1890s and the early 1900s, authorities did not realize the number of cases that were similar until 1911. And by that time, the killings seemed to stop with the famous Villisca, Iowa murders that occurred in 1912. If you Google Villisca, pretty much the first thing that's going to come up is the Villisca murders that I believe are still unsolved as well. In that case, 6 members of one family, along with 2 house guests, were all slaughtered, similar to the Stetka family. The crimes are eerily similar when compared to the serial killer's MO. So if you're looking at how this elusive serial killer that was written about in this book, how his crimes were committed, the ones that they believe can actually be contributed to the one individual, and how those crimes compare to the crime that occurred to the Stetka family. The murders all seem to occur between the hours of midnight and 1 a.m. They occurred in semi-rural towns that had no immediate police force within the town. A discarded axe was found at the scene, which was used as the murder weapon. and often the blunt edge of the axe, the blade side of the axe, wasn't always used. Some of the victims had been bludgeoned with the blunt side of the axe head. The houses were often located near the railway tracks, just like the Stetka's home. And if there were children in the homes, their faces were often covered with a blanket when they were found. Now, although the crimes were eerily similar, Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, where Dominion is located, it's over 3,000 kilometers from this supposed serial killer's preferred areas, mostly located in the Midwest US. That's an awful long way to travel to commit a crime. Now, whether he had traveled further east for work, whether he previously knew the Stetkas, we have no idea whether or not he had some previous connection to that area. To date, no one has ever been charged with the Stetka murders, and now that a century has passed, many details and any chance of solving the crime are long gone. So that was all of the information I could find on this particular crime that is actually believed to be the first case of mass murder in Nova Scotia. Finally picked a case that was outside the vicinity of Newfoundland. Although I think I did one where it was a lady that was killed in California before, but she was from Newfoundland originally. And as a matter of fact, this particular case still has a Newfoundland tie to it. The individual that was accused of assaulting Mrs. Stetka, James Snellgrove, he's originally from Newfoundland. So thank you for joining me for this episode. I really appreciate you taking the time to stop by, sit and get a half an hour or so of crafting done with me. Like I said, I'm really trying to get this cardigan finished by Christmas, and I seem to be on track to do so. If you like my videos, please feel free to subscribe to my channel. I do post coffee, crime, and craft videos every 2 weeks. And I intermittently post regular crafting videos focusing on my works in progress and which pieces I'm currently working on. I'm currently also posting a series to my channel for Christmas, which is called my Vlogmas or Flossmas videos. Those are popular within the crafting and the vlogging community. It's normally a video a day, counting down to Christmas. So please feel free to like and subscribe to my channel. If you want to help support my channel and the time it takes me to research these videos and put them together, you can check out the link in the description box down below. There's a link there to buy me a coffee, which is certainly always appreciated. I need all the coffee I can get for the late night researching that I do during my night shifts. So take care, everyone. Enjoy the next couple of weeks, and I'll see you back in 2 weeks for the next episode.